Yeah.
I was going to say, welcome everyone to our session on establishing relationships with school leaders. I'm so excited to introduce you to Allison Kegley, who will be facilitating our session today. Allison, take it away.
Hello. Well, thank you. I'm Allison Cagley from Friends of Sacramento Arts, and our vision is arts every day for every child in every school. So, wanted to start off with a quote that is from an author and professor, Joseph Campbell. And it says, "A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself." And I think about everybody on this call and those that couldn't make this call that are in education and in the arts, all for our children are all heroes. So, an interesting little trivia about Joseph Campbell. Some of his books actually influenced Star Wars movies and Superman. So you might want to, on your spare time, check out Joseph Campbell, the author, on Google. Anyway, just want to welcome you to this. My favorite part of the fall is definitely the cooler weather and the leaves turning all sorts of amazing colors, and just thankful for being able to enjoy all the colors of nature that come with the fall. So welcome, and we're going to be talking with three great leaders from our community about arts education and how to ensure arts education for all students through Prop 28, and to learn from them of how to collaborate and partner for future success of Prop 28 and our children's education. So we'd first like to start with Nancy Cheris Espinoza. And Nancy is the Elk Grove Unified School District Board President. Elk Grove is a large unified school district in the southern part of Sacramento, and very large district, very committed to arts education. And she, as you can see from the screen, has a plethora of wonderful experience, both in education and in local government. And she's also a mother of an Elk Grove Unified School District student and a graduate of the district. So she's been part of the Elk Grove community for so long. So welcome, Nancy, and take it away.
Thank you, Allison, for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and I'm so excited to talk about arts education. So, and gosh, I want to thank you for taking on this topic, because helping folks build their advocacy skills is one of my absolute favorite topics. So, the first thing that came to mind is that you all will be walking into very different circumstances, right? Because school districts in California are in very different places in terms of their offerings and their planning for arts education. So one thing that's really going to determine what the work is that you have to do and how you approach it is learning the context that you're walking into. So are you walking into a district that has already a history of providing high quality and or broad arts education? Do they have a demonstrated commitment to the arts? Are there things like a master plan already in place? Are there champions for arts education on your governing board? All of those things are really important. I'll tell you, when I was in a staffer role, once I've had folks come to me kind of guns blazing in terms of their advocacy style, not knowing that they were actually walking into the office of one of their biggest advocates. So you just want to avoid that kind of mismatch, right? Because you can have folks who are your biggest champions, and I'm not saying you need to do like any kind of brown nosing, definitely not. But you want to know who you're talking to so that you can calibrate your message the right way, right? Equally important to know, hopefully the district will have, by the time you're reaching out to them, a point person at the district administrative level for this, and that person, might be your new best friend, right? They're in a very pivotal position to both inform and influence the board, and to be a critical point of contact for members of the community. So they are the ones who will be able to answer probably a lot of the questions that I'm going to raise later on. So who is that district point person? If for some reason your district says they haven't established who that is yet, a gentle nudge is appropriate, like, hey, now is a good time. So I mentioned, does your district have an arts master plan? In our district, we call it a roadmap. If so, where are they in that implementation cycle, right? Is it coming up to time to update that? So does that mean there's an opportunity for involvement in that? Or are they in, relatively early in that cycle, and you have an opportunity to help oversee the implementation, see how they integrate Prop 28. That will really determine kind of what the work is to do. If there is such a document, hopefully there is, make sure you familiarize yourself with it. What is it about that document that you want to get involved in helping to implement? Is there something missing that you want to advocate be added, particularly now with new funding sources? Do you agree with the overall strategy and the priorities? Once the plan has been set, we can assume that they're going to implement that to the best of their ability. But the next time they're revising it, they'll revisit those conversations, right, about the overall strategy and priority. So that would be the appropriate time to raise those issues. And does your district have an arts education advisory committee or a steering committee? And if so, does that committee include parents or community members? Is there a place for advocates on that table? So those are all really important questions to ask. And another really critical difference across districts that I think we're going to see is the degree to which decision making on how we spend Prop 28 funds is centralized or decentralized, right? So yes, there are some responsibilities on your board to approve the overall funding plan, but I expect we're going to see some variability in terms of what gets funded, like actual programming, because some districts will want to do it all in a very centralized way and not put that work on their site leaders, whereas others will see it as more of an asset to have the decisions be made in kind of as grassroots a way as possible, right? They will want site leaders reaching out to the families they're serving directly, which means a lot more work for your already overburdened site leaders, right? So there's pros and cons either way. But it's important for you to know that, because you need to know kind of where, at what level in the organization the decisions are going to be made, because those are the people that you want to make sure you're in contact with, and that you're following that decision-making process. So what are the key decision-making points, right? There are going to be some deadlines for approval of a funding plan, but there may be some other key points where you want to be plugged in and know when that's going to take place and who the deciders are, so you can be part of that conversation. Another thing to consider is whether the decisions on the Prop 28 funding are going to be made kind of independently, or whether they're going to be incorporated into your district's ongoing broader arts funding process, right? So if you had a pre-existing arts master plan or funding process, it's likely they're going to be incorporated. If you didn't, it's a whole new process. So that will also look differently across districts. How to plug in will vary, because so if the decisions will be mostly centralized, it'll be easier for you to follow board agendas, right? Most districts hopefully have a way that you can sign up to get notified when a new agenda is posted. If it's a district advisory committee or even a school site advisory committee, there's going to be an email list that you should be able to sign up for. And again, if those things are not in place, a gentle nudge is appropriate. Ask the questions and say, hey, I want to stay on top of this process in a way that, means that I don't have to call and email you and take up your time. So is there a way that we can set up a listserv or something like that? I also want to address, how members of the community can bring value to decision makers, how you can help, because, you're such a wonderful asset. We are always on the lookout for what the need is, right? So what do students need? Where are the gaps that we're trying to fill? What are the barriers currently for our students to access different kinds of arts education? And again, that'll look different in your communities. Last time my district did its roadmap, we were really focused on, what we consider the low-hanging fruit, which is things like kids not be able to access music education because of the cost of having to pay for sheet music or instrument rental, things of that nature. So I really encourage you to focus kind of systemically on, let's remove the barriers. Also, what does culturally relevant arts education look like in your particular community? Because that's going to vary tremendously, right? We've got just a very different makeup in every single one of the communities that we serve, and for a multitude of reasons, it's just important that that the all of the education that we provide be culturally relevant. And I want to talk about your messaging, kind of how you deliver your advocacy message once you've done all that work and you have a sense of, okay, this is what I think the ask is. Be really clear and focused on what students stand to gain from whatever that you are proposing. It's just so easy to get caught up, and it's almost seems like it's a trend right now to get into like emotional arguments, and there are some drawbacks to that, particularly because this is not really controversial, right? This is all about doing good things for kids. So if you are very clear about, like, if you approve X funding this way, we can ensure that no children will have to pay for, rental of instruments or things like that. Just really concrete on what the takeaways are. Focus on those common goals and common values, and really try to avoid creating division. And by that, I mean mostly division within different segments of the arts community, because it's a limited pot of dollars, right? And every dollar allocated to one purpose means it's not allocated to another. That's the difficult position that the decision makers are in, which is why I don't recommend kind of a more emotional or guilt-based appeal, but really just factual, like this is what the kids stand to gain if you do what I'm asking. And again, not that I think anyone in this group would be guilty of it, but we're seeing it a lot in school board world right now. Insults are not a persuasive form of advocacy. Um, questioning people's commitment to kids, questioning people's commitment to arts education. It may or may not be true, right? But does it move you closer to your goal? So I would say if you come across those folks, if you want to ignore them is better than, trying to tackle them in that negative sense. Focus on who your champions are. But at the same time, if you see anyone that's persuadable, that you think it's not quite that they've made up their mind, but that they really haven't been informed or educated, I would encourage you to reach out to them. It's something I personally have always done. From the beginning of my political career, I was told, just kind of based on politics and demographics, it's a waste of time for you to go after, X person or X type of person. And those tend to be the first people I invite out to coffee, because, you'd be surprised once you find a way to connect in any way, shape, or form, common goals, common values. It makes working together easier. And you may or may not come to agreement on the substantive things, but it's going to make the entire process easier. And lastly, I will say that in terms of advocacy and public policy, this conversation, I'm not saying it's going to be easy per se, but this is about as easy as it gets, right? Because we have a defined pot of money that we know, there are going to be some differences in exactly how we allocate that within arts education. But it's really important to remember that everybody that we're going to be encountering in the steering committees and the administration and your school boards are all on the same side. We're all on the same team. So at the end of the day, like, the worst case scenario is that kids are going to get more arts education, right? So if we get upset, if we encounter differences, let's just remember that that's the worst case scenario, which would be a dream come true, right? And a lot of other topics. So just wanted to share that with you. It's really important to keep the whole context in mind, and make sure that your school board members, or if you've got that point person at the district level, are providing you with that information that you need. And if you're not getting the answers you are, just, apply that gentle pressure. And
Thank you so much, Nancy. Quick question: would it be good for folks to look up the bios and the backgrounds of the school board members, and then actually schedule one-on-ones with each of them just to introduce themselves and who their kids are and how they're involved with the district already, just to have a face-to-face kind of thing with each of the board members?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I would start with whoever is in the part of the district that you live in. But it's a good idea always. I love meeting people. Anyone who wants to take a greater role, I always say, let's have coffee. Sooner or later, I will find the place to plug you in. So absolutely use that as an opportunity to introduce yourself, to get some of these questions answered, and to look for opportunities for further involvement.
Thank you. That's great. So thank you, Nancy. I'm sure we'll have more questions for you. So we're on to now Denise Egan. And Katya, if you can put her slide up, that would be great. So Denise, I've worked with Denise now for a few years and just love working with her. She's the Director of Arts and Career Education for Twin Rivers, which is in kind of the northeastern or northwestern section of Sacramento County. And as the bio here says, she was an art teacher for 3 decades and has a master's in arts education. Twin Rivers has had a terrific experiences over the last several years with arts education. And she's from Georgia, so you'll hear a little bit of that Southern twang in her voice as she talks about her work in arts education in Twin Rivers. So take it away, Denise.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for everybody for being here today. So much of what Nancy was just saying, I want to say yes, like so much of that. I'm right on, right in line with that. So as Allison said, I work in Twin Rivers. We are on the north side of Sacramento. My role as district director of arts and career ed, it's such a long title and it has other things obviously tagged in. But I work with our TK-12 visual informing arts program throughout the district. We have arts teachers throughout all grade levels, but we've got gaps that we've had a hard time filling over the years. Funding, staffing, all kinds of things have kept us from really growing out the program like we want it to be in the district. We've been fortunate to use the LCAP funding that has come about to provide extra opportunities for our students. We spend some of our supplemental money that we get through our LCAP funding to provide arts opportunities for our kids to get out into the community. So like I was telling the team before we jumped on today, we had 380 kids in a play seeing live theater for the first time. It was awesome. And we've got 4 more plays to go. So those kind of things we feel like is really important. We also have a big emphasis on arts integration because we feel like arts isn't just limited to the VAPA classroom. We feel like there's lots of ways that everybody can bring up the quality instruction for our kids through the arts. So as far as what I'm doing personally and my team we're working on as far as Prop 28 goes, we have a strategic plan in place. We've had a strategic plan in place since 15. But like I said, there were always gaps. There were always shortfalls. There were things that we couldn't move as fast as we want it to be. So this is kind of like a dream come true because some of the things we want to do, we've wanted to do my entire career. We are looking at how we then implement this plan to really provide equitable access to high quality arts to all our kids. We don't want anybody out. So that's what my team and I are working on. And we are reaching out to parents now saying, be part of our arts advisory committee. Give us your input. We are working closely with the team that does our LCAP assessment every year, the survey that we send out to parents on how we can use that data to help us make sure we're meeting the needs of our parents. One thing I've done, and I'll be honest, as an art teacher, math was not my favorite, but I've gotten really good at spreadsheets over the last year because I've been compiling data so that we had a clear picture that everybody could understand of what we offer and what we don't offer. A perfect example would be we were able to use LCAP funding 9 years ago to begin to offer art and music to our elementary kids. Not as much as we wanted. We can only get it half-time, but half-time's better than nothing. We're using that as our baseline. So I went in and turned it into a number spreadsheet that our budget people could understand. I kind of shocked them when I came in and spread this out in front of them. They were like, wait, you turned it into this? And I was like, but that's how you do everybody else. That's how you count all the other teachers. Isn't that how we need to count ours? So I know, because some of the people on this meeting today are also my colleagues who are in the trenches with me. They're also directors and arts leads in their districts. We're all doing a lot of that. We're all looking at where are we and what we need to do next. So looking at what help we could use from the community, whether that's parents or the arts community, we need your input. We need, when we're asking, we really do need people to give us their input. As specific and, positive action oriented you can make that input, the better. We, in our district, we do annual LCAP surveys. It's advertised through our website and our parent communication and our teachers. We send it out to everybody in our community to try to get input on where they want us to put our focus. That kind of information really does make a difference. So when it comes across a parent's text message from the district, or you see it on a social media post, please don't skip it, right? Give us that input. We really want to make sure we're meeting your needs. We also need you to be our advocates. When we, beat that drum, so to speak, of why we need the arts in the schools, they're going to say, well, of course you want it. You're an arts teacher. We need to hear it from the parents. We need to hear it from the community. We need to hear it from our other administrators. So if you have a chance to talk to the principal at your kid's school, or the members of your school board, or even people who, are in our assembly or somehow in state government, sharing that information makes a difference. If you're part of our arts organizations, please don't be strangers. We don't know everybody. Like, being able to network with you, meet with you, talk to you about what you offer is only going to make our programs grow. Being that thought partner, that networking, it's invaluable. Sometimes what happens is I'll meet an arts organization, love what they have going on, but it may not be able to immediately put it into action. But that doesn't mean we're forgotten, right? So a year, maybe 6 months, we may be surprised at what we can do if we just have that conversation. So meeting people is going to make a difference. One of the things that Allison and the team said, what do we wish the community knew? Like Nancy said, there are good programs out there. I'm extremely proud and passionate about the program we have at Twin Rivers, but truthfully, it's not as big as I want it to be. There are definite gaps. And I know I'm not the only one who feels that way about their own program. There's always room for growth. And we are still feeling the effects of decades of legislation, other ballot measures like funding cuts. It's going to take us a while to regroup. Staffing is going to be a huge issue for us. But having your advocacy will make a big difference. And sometimes your advocacy could be as simple as showing up at the kids' arts events. Like, we have a arts event we put on in Twin Rivers. It is such a morale boost for the staff, for the students, and it's a huge collection of data for our administrators on why we need to continue having in these programs, because they're seeing parents, families come together through the arts. So that attendance really does make a difference. The other thing I want people to understand is that, and I've had to learn it the hard way once I moved out of the classroom to this office, was that we always have spending restrictions. Like, we just can't spend on anything and everything. There's things that we have to do to follow the plans as they've laid out. And if you have questions as why we're spending money on this as opposed to that, just ask us. Like, I'd be happy to explain anybody, anytime, why we made that decision. So I guess my big ask for you is to find out how your district, or the districts that you serve, collect feedback from the community. Like Nancy said, everybody's going to do it different. Like, we are right now, actually, I'm looking at my calendar, it ends on the 20th. We are collecting data through a platform that our district has used for several years. It goes out through our district communication on our website. It's emailed, it's texted, everything. This link goes out for people to type in their feedback. It's short, but it really makes a difference. Find out what your district does. Everybody needs to make sure they're giving input. And truthfully, I've got my VAPA teachers having their kids, their students get on and give input. So like my high school art teachers, my middle school music teachers, they're taking a few minutes and the kids are logging on to the platform. Ours is called Thought Exchange. And the kids are giving their input about what they want to. So it can't just be the adults having the conversation. Kids need to be part of it too. My biggest wish is that we don't let this opportunity pass, that we don't get bogged down in so much red tape and confusion that we lose this opportunity. Because I've been in arts a long time. I've never seen anything like this. So I don't want us to squander what we have in front of us. It could be life-changing for all of us.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
So quick question. So I know that someone had mentioned to me recently that now is the time to see about getting on an LCAP committee. So that they will have parent community members for that. Is that something that you're seeing as well?
We collect, this is the time of year we're collecting feedback. But there are other meeting points and committees throughout the year, like the district leadership team and things like that, that are constantly being updated. But odds are your districts are collecting LCAP survey information of some sort, because they have, even though the plans are 3-year plans, they have to update them annually.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, Nancy, do you want to speak to that question about LCAP before I go on to Melanie? Or
I would say that's probably another thing that's going to vary across districts, right? The LCAPs are meant to be centralized, so theoretically they should, address the programming for arts education. But in some districts, they might have the bulk of that work outside of the LCAP. The bulk of the detail is probably going to be in a separate plan.
okay, and I think a lot of times the districts do have LCAP information on their websites as well. So
yeah.
folks
I
can
mean, it's always
access
a good
that.
idea to get involved in the LCAP process, and there is a parental involvement, parental outreach requirement to that. So there absolutely should be opportunities for involvement.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Denise. So if folks have any questions, they can put them in the chat and we can field them after we hear from Melanie. So you can think about some different questions that you'd like to ask. So thank you, Denise. So now we'll switch over to somebody that's really in the trenches with students on a day-to-day basis, and that's Melanie Allen. And Melanie is the principal at Deduding Elementary School, and that's a San Juan district, which is central northwest, I guess is what you'd say for Sacramento County. And she has personal experience with acting and singing and music, and brings that enthusiasm to her school. And so we welcome Melanie to come and talk about her experiences in the San Juan district, and in particular in her school as a principal. So thank you, Melanie.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here and talk about something that is so close to my heart. And I wanted to thank especially Nancy and Denise for covering what you've covered already. So if I'm sifting through my notes here, it's because they've done such a good job of really honing in on things that I also wanted to make sure that we covered today. So like Nancy said, I come from a little bit different perspective. So I actually am a principal at an art school. My goal always is to be very transparent about the processes that we go through. So I'm currently on the district committee who is looking at how to spend the Prop 28 funds. And I'm on there twofold, one as a site principal of an arts school, and also as the president-elect of my union. So if you're looking at right now, asking questions about how your district is going about planning for this, I would I would hope that they're doing it very thoughtfully, which it sounds like from Nancy and Denise was happening in their districts. It's not a fast process. It shouldn't be a fast process. I've been in education for 24 years. In fact, one of my old partner teachers is on here today. And we've known that over that amount of time, the pendulum shifts back and forth constantly and things get implemented and then lost. And arts education is such an important thing that we want this to be lasting. And so if we want it to be lasting, it needs to be implemented in a thoughtful process with a lot of input from everybody, as well as looking at what the data says is good for kids. So like Nancy and Denise both said, starting at maybe the district level and getting kind of an idea of what is already been implemented at schools. And then from there, looking specifically at the types of things that are there and the equity. That is a huge issue. I am so proud to be part of San Juan, who has for many years made arts the focus, one of their main focuses of the school district. But even within our district, we have a lot of work to do to make that equitable for all students. We are an open enrollment district. I get more open enrollment students at this school than any of the other elementary schools because of our arts and music programs. But students shouldn't have to provide their own transportation to drive to a school because they want arts education. That arts education should be readily available at every school. So I would, as a parent or as a fellow educator or anyone who's a champion of the arts, I would look at what is being offered and what is being offered between schools. I highly encourage you to not be an advocate just for your child, but to be an advocate for every child and looking at that across the district so that you can see where the holes might be. For instance, my students all get art, music, recorder, and band free during the school day. That is not offered at any of the other schools. Some have art, some have music. There is no other school in our district that gets free instruments and free bands twice a week. I pay $320 a month for my daughter to have violin lessons. I know how much it means to people to have free band instruction 2 times a week with incredible instructors. So looking at what kind of services and what arts are offered, and then looking at the quality of those arts. So if we want lasting quality art instruction, we have to look at the teachers and what we are providing for them. So I don't think you would want to put your student into a regular classroom where a teacher is not qualified to teach. It would be the same thing. We need to invest time and money into the actual training of our teachers. So there are so many different theories and ways that people are trained. And I think it was Nancy and maybe Denise that mentioned, we need to look at the students that we have in our district, culturally relevant materials. So some of the stuff that we have is so outdated. It is not, kids don't relate to what it is at this point. And then we have a lot of kids with special needs. I know anyone who's in a school district right now, and maybe anyone who's just aware, ADHD numbers and other special needs are off the charts. And so the arts is a fantastic way to meet a lot of those needs. So we have a dance teacher with a dance room. I know that PE are required minutes. So that's another way that your district could look at getting those required PE minutes is through having a dance teacher. It is an investment. We have to have the space, one, to have the room. We have mirrors in the room. We do performances throughout the year. And so looking at how that positively affects students throughout the school day. Students are able to go to a place where they're learning about dance, but they're also getting movement so that when they're going back to class, they've had that movement break and they're able to focus more on what's going on in class. So there are so many different types of arts that could be offered. And I know that we can't offer every single thing to everybody all the time, but as we're going through this process and doing it thoughtfully, looking at everything that's offered, kind of that hierarchy of what are the best things for our students at which grade levels, because something that may be really good in elementary may not transfer to middle school or high school. So really kind of doing the research and data on that. And that is where you can talk to schools who have implemented programs, districts who have implemented programs, your VAPA coordinators in those districts. They would have a good idea of the success at those schools. And then not the money that we have, it's going to go fast, right? It sounds like a lot of money, but it is going to go fast. So looking at not only personnel, which is going to take up a lot of time and space, but also paying for supplies that we need. Denise talked about field trips. So many of our kids, even kids who are at my school who would have access that have never been to theaters before. So we use some of our PTO money to make sure kids can go to B Street or to an ensemble band performance so that they can experience that live. And just looking at what are the things that can be offered, what is most applicable to all students, and then making sure that our teachers are trained, not only the teachers who are teaching the arts, but that all of your teachers are aware of what the art programs are and how they are supporting students. That doesn't mean they have to teach art with the art teacher, but the collaboration with the classroom teachers is so important. One day else, what I would talk about, I think we've hit a lot of the things. But yeah, just knowing that this is hopefully a lasting thing. We don't want the arts to ever go away. So as we're implementing, looking at what are long-term pieces that we can put in place that are sustainable.
Great, thank you so much. And a question, so, with Detterding being an art school and showing that there is art during the school day, so they, because sometimes there's conversation about, well, how can we fit art in because we have to teach everything else? And so is there a way that with your successful model that is shared with the other schools in the district? Because, the diversity of principals and where their interests and their passion and their directions are, how to help equalize and inform the principals at all the other elementary schools about the success of your program and how they can, in some ways, use some of those elements for their own school. Is that something
that's one of the
that's possible?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're working on right now in our work group for Prop 28 is with our VAPA director, Michael Dittmer. We're looking at what does every school currently have in place. Our union contract has 4 40-minute prep times, specialist times per week, but that has been up to the site to decide what those are. So sometimes it's a technology class, sometimes it's a regular PE class, which is not a dance class. Right. So looking at kind of what are people choosing as their site focus, and is there a way to still cover those things with also adding in the arts elements? When you look at the equity issue, not only with teaching, but with the actual supplies and things that our kids are getting. So we have an art room, we have a kiln. That is not something that is normal at other elementary schools, but could be, right? So when kids are talking about art, at our school, it could be very different from a teacher who is a highly qualified teacher, but who has a cart that they're moving around from class to class. It is a completely different experience for kids to walk into an art room and have the artistic experience versus having a teacher come into them in their regular classroom and doing art. Both great. It's very different experiences.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. All these amazing champions of arts education and at all different levels. And so thank you so much. So do we have any questions in the chat, Katya, or if folks want to unmute themselves and ask a couple questions of any of them or all of them?
Happy I have a couple that I wanted to lift up.
Sure.
Dana asks, let me just pull it up. How can we encourage and support our students to give their input? Student voices matter and lead to change. What tools have you all used to help amplify your students' voices?
I can start. We use all of the above to try to get our students' take, particularly to inform our priorities around the LCAP and similar decisions. We use surveys. We now have a student board member, and we used to do direct outreach to students kind of in a different way, but now what we've gone to is kind of tasking our student board member with doing outreach to each of the high schools at least, and reporting back to the board. So there are different ways to structure it. And again, I feel like I'm answering everything by saying it depends, but you're building on top of the structures that already exist in your district. So ideally, you're going to try to seamlessly weave this into the way that things are already working, unless there really isn't anything at all, and you have to create it from scratch. But it's going to look a little bit different depending on how student voice generally is accounted for in your district.
Anybody else want to answer that question? Oh, Denise?
So we've been working really hard to expand our programs so that we can offer a wider range of arts opportunities for our kids, not just band. I mean, I know I've got some band people on here and I don't want to offend you, but like not everybody's meant for the traditional band experience. So like based on the feedback our music teachers are getting from their students, we have stretched out our music program. So yes, we still have choir and we still have traditional band, but now we've added basically like a rock band class, a guitar class, we have piano, we have where we had a rock band class that morphed into mariachi. So now we've just started this year offering, well, we just gone through the approval process. It'll start in 24. We're offering a mariachi class. So we are trying to make our program not be one size fit all. I'm a real believer in that old adage of, build it and they'll come. They don't know what they're coming to. So you've got to go to them and find out what they are looking for and then morph it to it. So we had strong 2D programs in our district, but we had very few 3D programs. We've talked to kids and now we're adding ceramics, we're adding sculpture. So we're continuing to add, and a lot of it comes from talking to the kids directly through their teachers. So
that's great. Oh, I think Veronica had her hand up. So did you want to unmute yourself, Veronica? And
yes, thank you. I put this question in the chat earlier, just to follow up to Denise. Just in preliminary conversations in the school district where I work, some of the conversation has been around various programs. So I'm curious to know how certain programs would be prioritized. Would it be based upon the results of a survey? How many students are interested in mariachi versus choir versus dance versus photography? Because there's always the option for folks to generally want to support their own program, and it can kind of cause a competition, so to speak. So I'm just curious how districts have handled that to determine, and it is ongoing money, but which programs get funded which years.
Denise, do you want to speak to that, or maybe Nancy? Okay.
So the program that we've had has centered mostly on visual art and music. One of the challenges has been the way teachers are credentialed, because art is a single subject credential, music is a single subject credential. And so you can, even though it may not be your first choice, but if you're a music teacher, technically you could teach the full range, right? It's like I got hired as an art teacher and walked in and had 20 wheels. Suddenly I became a ceramics teacher, right? So it happens all the time. Theater and dance are the two that we're trying to add the most, because we know that's our gap. So we're trying, as part of our strategic plan, we're trying to set baseline minimums of what should be at a program based on the size of the school. Like, how much dance can we afford to staff? How much theater can we afford to staff? So part of the challenge in that is that the credentialing program has just changed. So it used to be PE can teach dance. You had to have a PE credential to teach dance. And you had to have an English language arts credential to teach theater. Over the last couple of years, that's changed, but we haven't got the teachers coming out of the credentialing programs to meet our needs. Currently, I have 3 dance positions that I'm trying to fill because we're trying to provide dance at the high schools. Same things for theater, but the problem is our schools don't have auditoriums or stages. So it's one thing to offer, say, hey, we want to offer theater at this high school. So where are they going to do that theater? In a regular classroom? Are they going to do it in the cafeteria that doesn't have a stage? Like, there's some infrastructure issues that we're going to be battling, which is going to bring a whole new set of problems or challenges, I'll say, because, you know, I don't want a dance teacher teaching dance on that linoleum floor. I want them to have a spring-loaded floor, right? But that in itself, that's not really covered from what we can tell yet in Prop 28. So where does that facilities money come in? In the meantime, what I've been doing is working with our other partners in the district. Expanded Learning has had some expanded funding. And so we've been working on how can we fill in the gaps. So we are starting to we're exploring how can we offer piano lessons after school at schools that don't have a piano lab? How can we offer violin lessons after school for those kids, right? Theater clubs, whatever. So it's like we said a lot, it's not going to be a one size fits all, but the conversations are being had where our goal is not to leave anybody out, right? That's my goal. I think my colleagues on here or other district leads probably feel the exact same way.
Nancy, thank you, Denise. So Nancy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to underscore Denise's point about the importance of facilities. So full disclosure, that's what I do for my day job. I'm an education lobbyist and I specialize in school facilities. I'm actually coming to you from the Coalition for Adequate School Housing Fall Conference. Melanie, I just had a nice chat with Frank Camarda from your district. So often facilities are a limiting factor when you want to expand programming, right? We had some other kind of good problems to have recently, like rolling out universal transitional kindergarten. Well, guess what? You know, our schools were designed for a certain number of grades, and adding an entire new grade is really hard to do, especially when the legislature says we want that done by next year, and we're going to give you some of the money a few years from now. So just know that your districts are dealing with that. Just about at the same time, you know, we got a new requirement for universal school meals, which again, fantastic problem to have. You know, never mind that for 20 years, the state has been saying, don't build on-site kitchens, build centralized kitchens. And now they want on-site kitchens and everything hot, fresh, and made from scratch overnight. So facilities are often a limiting factor for your programming, and that's going to be just as true for which types of arts, especially performing arts, but really all of them. So that may play into what you ask for and the sequencing of your request, the sequencing of the work in your master plan. But I also have to put in a plug for another place where, as an arts advocate, you can be of value, and that's in the facilities planning process, right? Your districts are going to have a 5 or a 10-year facilities master plan, and that is the appropriate place to say, how are we aligning our facilities master plan with our arts education plan?
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Very good point. Yes. I know some of the schools have new theaters, but you know, you have to have things on site in order to make it accessible and easy and not having to transport people all over the place. So thank you. I noticed too in the chat that Janet puts a link in there. So if people want to look at a little bit about that, about some of the gaps as art consultants. And then also I think there's some other things in there in the chat that are helpful. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments that they would like to offer up? I know we have lots of our friends from around the region on the call. So
Can we lift up Debbie Yarrow's question in the chat? This is a question for you, Nancy. Are there outside resources, other organizations providing information to your board about Proposition 28 and other information like this, or are you on your own to find out information?
Personally, I haven't had any other group reach out to me yet. I think, you know, again, that's going to vary across communities, right? There are just some places where, you know, the arts advocacy community is a lot more active, But I think my experience is probably typical of most board members, where we're really just waiting for CD to give us the guidance on, what can we spend this money on? What are the rules around, spending 80% of it on people? Does that mean employees? Does that mean contracting? What kind of requirements do those folks need to meet in order for us to be able to hire them or contract them? So no, we are in a place where we're waiting for a lot of that information to be provided, our questions to be answered. And as soon as we get to the point where people can answer those questions or start to fill those needs for us, like come as an organization and say, hey, I have 10 folks who can teach theater or whatever have you, you will become our new best friends. Absolutely. So no, there really isn't much right now.
So, and just as an update on some of that information, for Friends of Sacramento Arts, we've been working with Create CA and also with the California County Superintendent's Office. And tomorrow we have our second meeting with CDE. Hopefully SSPI Thurman will be there. He was there at our first one, and it's to really push to get a arts lead in CDE to coordinate both internally and externally. I know they still have the email address of prop28@cdeca.gov, but there's not one central department that's fielding all of those. They get kind of shuttled, whether it's government affairs or it's fiscal. But from the latest I've heard, they are looking to fill that position so that there can be a centralized resource at CDE for implementation. And I know that Create California has been doing a lot of advocacy work here at the Capitol to partner more actively with CDE to make sure that it is implemented correctly and everybody has the tools that they need to do that. And Adelaide, I think from my recent conversations with folks that February is about the time frame the funds are supposed to be released. And again, just to remind folks that the funds can be spent over a 3-year period. So it's not a use it or lose it proposition. So that gives a little bit of breathing time on how to correctly plan for and implement. And for those of you on the call that are in school districts that you may not be able to find an arts plan, Create California has some great tools on their website that you could provide as an advocate, as a parent, as a community member back to your district to say, here's some ways that you can help to design a plan between now and February when the money starts coming in. And also to reach out. I know that, as Denise mentioned, Twin Rivers has a plan. CJ DeAngelis at Sac City does. Many of the districts have arts plans. So you can also reach out to other folks and, look at theirs and find out what they're doing, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So collaboration and partnership with other districts helps us not feel so isolated in our questions. So any other questions or comments?
Question. So this is combining two questions, but it's a question around the best way for arts organizations, nonprofit organizations to connect with school leaders and how they can support on Prop 28 from their position as outside nonprofits.
Somebody raised a great point, because I think we've been talking mostly about reaching out to decision makers, but I really appreciated them raising the point about the importance of reaching out to other advocates in your community. So that is something that arts education or arts organizations could really bring a lot of value to, which is helping that community kind of coalesce around what they think the needs are, kind of a common ask, because it's the best way to kind of flex your power, right? If you have a common request, as opposed to we're the theater community fighting against the music community or whatever. So to the extent that organizations could help create a common vision among the advocates in the community, that would go a really long way and be very helpful to decision makers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna leave it at that at the moment. I know you all have asked so many great questions, and I really appreciate some answers that Other participants have also answered in the chat. I really do appreciate that, but I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Thank you so much to Nancy, Melanie, and Denise for coming on today to speak about how our education leaders, how we can support our education leaders today when implementing Prop 28. And thank you so much to Allison Cagley for from Friends of Sacramento Arts for facilitating this session today.